Good day, chess world. So, thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining in on this exploration that we continue on the logical chess move by move series. And the purpose of going through all of this is to help you to grow your knowledge of how to successfully attack the enemy king. How do you attack a castled position once the opponent has castled short? Specifically, today's session is focused on how to take advantage of your opponent's loss of time. My tip to you when we see this game is try to develop with intent. As we'll see in today's game, white is guilty of moving pieces, but not developing pieces with an intention behind them, with a meaning, if you will. So this game is 1929, and let's see this wonderful theme that we're going to pick up and have a look at. It starts with a queen's pawn game. We get knight f6, then we get knight f3. As we know, with knight f6, this is what we call the beginning of the Indian family of openings. It could transpose into many structures. And now after pawn to e6 here, we could have a Nimzo Indian or a Queen's Indian, but white plays instead the knight bd2, which is a little bit of a strange development of the move. The intention, as we will see, is I would like to play e4 and transpose into game 10 of a French defense. But black smartly challenges the center here, where they seek to trade a side pawn for a middle pawn, trying to get more control of the center. So black has now put that pressure on the center. White responds with e3, and suddenly maybe the knight sitting here is not the best development, but there's nothing wrong with what white has done. We've seen this in earlier games, that this is the collie opening. White is going to focus on simple kingside development, so black focuses on their development of mobilizing their bishop. And you can see one of the themes of the Indian openings, the King's Indian, the Nimzo Indian, the Queen's Indian, they do not rush to place their pawns in the center. So they look to control the center with their pieces and then use the time later to bring their pawns into the middle and fight for the center. So at this stage, white plays bishop d3. Everything is fine for both sides. Bishop b7. Now we get castles. And then black simply plays bishop e7. And this is about that idea of flexibility, keeping the position very fluid in terms of the center pawns. White should seize this chance, which is a standard idea in a collie, to push their pawn from e3 to e4. But they didn't like that central change, and they instead decided to play this idea of c4, which is very much like a queen's gambit. And as we'll see, the setup is not perfect for white because this pawn, yes, fights for the center, but now black castles b3, and then white simply decides to develop. Black decides to play pawn d5, and white develops their queen to c2. Now, this is a slight error, as we'll see that becomes bigger and bigger. Certainly, what white should have done is finish mobilizing their bishop. My advice to you when we look, they played b3, seeking to fianchetto. And when someone is going to fianchetto, get the job done. So when they've played b3, they should have placed the bishop on b2. I want you to imagine it as if it's halfway through castling. When you're going to make that pawn move to get the bishop in the game, then finish the job off. Otherwise, it could result later on in some heartache and headaches. And that's precisely what happens because white now plays this move of queen c2, which is a little bit careless. Yes, they are fighting on this diagonal. Yes, they're controlling e4. But as we'll see, black can now develop with time. And in my introduction, I said to you, you should try to develop with intention, with a reason why you're putting the pieces on certain squares. And we can see that as white is exiting the opening here, they are guilty a little bit of not following a reason for their moves. So b3 was played with the intention of playing bishop e2. Get that done. Now instead they've played queen c2, but it is not yet clear, is the queen necessary on this diagonal? Does it work? Because it doesn't really create a threat. So black plays knight c6, and now there is a problem. Black is threatening to play knight b4 and gain, as we would say, the bishop pair positionally, where they would not win the bishop, but they would then have the bishop pair fighting against the knight and bishop, which here is a real edge, something tangible for black to work with. So white plays now pawn to a3. We've seen this in earlier games, go specifically into games 1, 2, and 3, where pawn moves on the side of the board can cost you time. It's very important to be careful not to play unnecessary pawn moves on the side of the board. Now, you might be wondering here, why would this be relevant for time? Because white has one move to make to finish their development, and black also has one move. Remember, development we say is finished when all your pieces are off the back rank and your rooks are connected. So in this position, it's a little bit strange, but black is the first one to potentially finish the opening. And that is a concern for white, because what we have here is a symmetrical position. The structures are a mirror of each other. Now, in symmetrical positions like this, a mirror position, time is massively important. We say the one that can make the first threat is then the one with the advantage. And black, of course, is the one that is now capable of making the first threats. And immediately we look at this tension in the middle, where this pawn is threatening this pawn is threatening this, and they can both capture the alternate ways as well. Time is a massively important situation because black already has their bishop in the game. Black also has this knight more active. So we're also learning here, what is activity? Activity is pieces' ability to make threats. Very, very important. So here, it is important for white to try and get their pieces in and compete. But black can strike first. Black can make these threats. So time matters. And black actually gains material now because they play pawn takes d4, and there is a problem. They had to take pawn takes back on d5, since if they calmly took back with a pawn, replacing a pawn with a pawn, black would capture, and suddenly we have this revealed threat. And I want to highlight, if white had developed their bishop earlier, they would not have this concern of their weak pawn on d4. They would have support for that pawn, showing the importance of finishing the mobilization there. And they are guilty of losing time. And this little half moment, just by having to play a3 and queen c2, has now cost white material. So be careful in symmetrical positions, that time is very important. So in this case, the pawn captured back on d5, black took with their queen, gaining more time. Now black is done with the opening, and they're a pawn up. So white has a problem. They take back on d4, and of course, black says, no problem, I will take with my knight. And suddenly we see the time factor, so very important. Look at this bishop staring at that king. So the knight on f3 cannot move. The queen on c2 is attacked, and white is very much regretting that queen move. So this is why, as I said to you earlier, valuable lesson, try to develop with an intention. So now they have to move their queen back to b1. How should we conduct ourselves with black? The early part of the game has gone so well for black. Black is up a pawn. Black has this wonderful knight in the center. They have better pieces. But what should they do to conduct themselves? Well, as we know, we would like to take this advantage and translate that to attack on the king. Why? Why is he picking the king here? This is so valuable for you in your games, where you need to still continue to have a pawn. It's a very plan. We've won a pawn, but we need to have a plan. And how do we form these plans? We have to look where we believe we stand better and what are the advantages for us. And I hope out of the series of videos and all of these games that we're going through, we can build a platform for you of understanding how to evaluate when are you better, what is better. So here, as black, wonderful control of the center. The knight controls d4. The queen is brilliantly placed. The bishop is well placed here. And if we look, we would like to bring more pieces to the king side because we can. They cannot keep up. So we already have the knight stationed ready to join in. We have this knight on d4, which has access on e2 and f3. We have the light squared bishop, which is joining up behind. So black's plan is now formed by playing rook to d8. Why? Get all your pieces in the game. Bring every piece, have every piece in a role. And that's what we see in this situation, where now the rook sits with a tactic. What tactic? Well, if black got the move, they would play knight takes knight check, and suddenly we see that the queen will be able to win the bishop. So once again, black is doing everything, developing with a threat, and white is on the back foot. White is struggling. So white tries as a solution knight to e1, taking the piece away from defending the king, but also ensuring that there is no mates on g2, and they will defend their bishop. So now we can see the king side is opening up as an option. So black plays queen h5, starting to look at the weakest square on the king position. And this is important when we talk about castling short. Generally, the weakest square then becomes, once someone castles, the h pawn. Why? Because it is the furthest away from supporting pieces. And black is, of course, looking to target this. White finally gets a chance to bring their bishop in the game, but this is now on the other side of the board. This will also show you the importance of a localized piece superiority, because on the king side, black can bring more pieces. If we look carefully, black has a situation where white has this queen, the bishop, the rook, also we could say the knight and the bishop. So this pile up of pieces all on the queen side. Therefore, we can get on the king side a localized piece superiority where we have more weapons arriving. So black plays brilliantly, bishop d6. That is a mate threat. Very serious. Now, of course, just for a little bit of exercise work for you, put in the comments below, how does black win if white puts their knight to defend h2? What does black do in that case? Because it looks like the knight is supported by a knight. So put that below, and let's share in this opportunity to understand the positions. So in the game, they played pawn to g3. Wonderful weakening of the light squares. And now we get an understanding that we want to continue to attack the weaknesses, occupy those weaknesses. So white follows up with knight g4. Absolutely superb, threatening. Queen takes here, checkmate, with the bishop staring on this diagonal. Brilliant, all of these weapons. And once again, that rule of three, I want you to take it forward in your games. There are now three pieces contributing: the knight, the queen, the bishop. And we will not forget the role of these other pieces that can play in support. But white has a wonderful defense. White can play pawn h4. This is what they decided they could defend with. All of their pawns are creating a barrier here, covering all of the dark squares. How do we break through? What should we do? Well, we can see we've got a great deal of weapons. We have a bishop, we have the knight, we have the queen, and here I'll introduce to you a wonderful mating pattern and theme. So beautiful, so pretty. Blackburne's mate. Blackburne's mate is where the minor pieces catch the enemy king in a checkmating net when they've castled short. So as a clue, obviously it means our queen is not involved. Our queen is just going to play a supporting role. So you're correct. For those of you that thought queen takes h4, spectacular. The threats, checkmate and checkmate. There is no choice here. They're going to have to capture the queen either now or later. So pawn takes, and bishop h2 is mate. How pretty is this mating combination, where the knight holds on to the bishop joins in. As I said to you, this is Blackburne's mate. What a pretty combination. And it is a great demonstration, again, of this process of creating weaknesses and then exposing those pawns that have lost their flexibility to an attack, and in many cases using sacrifice, in this case the queen, to open up so the pieces can get through. And we've seen some wonderful things to learn from this game. First of all, we're seeing Blackburne's mate. Secondly, we're getting an understanding of this process of attack. Notice what we did. We created this weakness when we played bishop d6. White's pawns had to move. We can now actually see that pawn to h3 was their best move. Then I want you to think carefully, how would you attack? What would you do if they did play h3? This is something in this type of structure we'll cover in some other games as well. But once they played g3, the light squares became so very weak. And we've seen in earlier games, specifically games 7 and 8, go look at them, when attacking those holes around the king, we saw how the pieces could occupy these gaps of h3, f3. In those cases, it was white attacking black, so it was f6, h6. But here we see this contribution of the knight joining in on that hole on g4 that is not well controlled. And that is a spectacular theme again to get in on the next weak square. Even if after knight g4, if white tried to bring their knight back in to defend the knight that they withdrew from the defense, we of course would still break through. We would play knight takes check, knight takes, bishop takes f3, and now we have a spectacular breakthrough in this position, because if they play pawn to h4, how do we get through? You got it. Same Blackburne's mate, queen takes. There's checkmates on h1, checkmate on this square, and there is no way they can stop this. This is once again, at this stage, it's what we call a mating net. It does not matter how much white will plead, how many pieces they throw in the way, they will be checkmated very quickly. So from this game, I hope you learn, number one, the importance of developing with intention. Number two, from Black's point of view, that pressure they placed on the center and how they were able to use the superior time. When we say time, means the pieces are able to execute threats. They are in the game. They're able to fight. And this moment where white played queen c2 seems so innocuous, so ordinary. But actually, it's a valuable lesson that white developed carelessly. They didn't develop with an intention. And this allowed black to gain a little bit of time. And now after a3, it becomes valuable time because black has all their minor pieces ready to fight. And then they open up the game. And that's the other big lesson I want you to see. If you have more pieces in the game, generally you'd like to open up the game because your better mobilized pieces being in the game will take advantage of the more open position. So a spectacular victory that we've seen here, transforming better time into this wonderful finish of Blackburne's mate by first focusing on the center, opening up the middle of the board, then switching from the center to the kingside, where they could bring superior weaponry and more pieces. So join us in the next one as we continue on our journey of growing your chess and how to attack the enemy king that is castle short.